Okay, good afternoon, or good, I guess it's still morning. Good morning, everyone. It'll be afternoon here when we're finished. Thank you for joining us for our October Lunch and Learn here at the Polk County Emergency Operations Center. We're happy to have some representatives here from the Attorney General's office, the Victim Rights group here. I can't remember the official title of your office, Tracy.
Victim assistance.
Victim assistance section. That's right. And we're going to have Deputy Director John Gish, will be here to kick things off for us here in just a minute. I'll give you a few kind of rules and lay of the land here in the EOC before we get started. But thank you for being here. If you have not been to our facility in the past, again, this is the Emergency Operations Center. If you need the restrooms at any time, you just go back out the doors that you came and take a left. They are basically on the opposite side of these two conference rooms here, C13 and C14, opposite side of that in the hallway. That's where you'll find the restrooms. If you do need a drink or a water refill, you go through our break room door there in the back. That will get you into our break room. And on the back side of that in the hallway there is a bottle refilling station. Other important things to note, we have some coffee available for you as well over here right below the AED. So again, another tip to keep in mind there. If we do have an emergency, AED is there. We can also exit right back out the way you came. If for whatever reason we cannot access that exit, we can go out the side here and exit through the public health side of the building. Basement, again, we don't expect any severe weather, but basement sheltering again would be back out our doors around the left and following the signs through the hallway. So that is kind of our lay here of the EOC. My name is Brett McIntyre. I am the training and exercise coordinator for Polk County Emergency Management. So I work to not only put these seminars on each month, but also work with training and exercise opportunities for our partners across the county, first responders, many of our different county agencies and rights groups that will work with many different portions of our community. And that's what we're going to hear a lot about today. Some of the trainings that we can help either make the connections and coordinate with, or that are available to us through our partner agencies. And again, I think it will be a very important topic here today to learn about some of those opportunities that in some cases are here and available to us for free. As long as we're able to spread the awareness and make the right connection. So I want to thank you for joining us. We passed out some evaluations that you can fill out at the end of the presentation on how you felt today was. And again, pass along any recommendations, topics, resources you would like to hear about or like to present. Again, we like to think of this as your time rather than us as emergency management trying to present to you. Again, we want to hear from you guys what your opinion is of what you'd like to know about, what you'd like to learn more about, or what you'd like to share. We're always looking for those maybe overlooked or lesser known resources that could use a little bit of a boost. So with that, I will turn it over. John, are you going first, or who?
We're going to do introductions.
Introductions first. All right. I will switch the video over and let you get going.
Hi, my name is Tracy Bearden. I'm the Strategy and Compliance Manager for the Victim Assistance Program. A little bit about my background. I have my master's in public administration from Drake University and my law degree from the University of Houston Law Center. From there, I went into the United States Border Patrol. Got out for a while bit, went back to school, and then I came and worked for Polk County for Emergency Management as a 911 coordinator for almost 8 years. And then I recently started with the Iowa Attorney General's office on May 13th, 2024. So that's a little bit about my background. I'm going to introduce Natalie Lampley right now, so she can give you a little bit about her background.
Hello, everybody. My name is Natalie Lampley. I am the resource coordinator with the training and outreach team. I've been with the AG's office about 3 years. Prior to that, my background was in direct services, consulting, facilitation, social services, in short. I did work with the judicial branch for about 5 years, working with the courts on accessibility to justice for services as they relate to like 236 protective orders, and just working with folks that were coming down to file for those protective orders to make sure that they knew what they were doing and how to access those services. Other than that, my I have a bachelor's, a dual bachelor's in human services and psych. I have a master's in psychology. I have some postgraduate education for a doctorate program, which I just got too old and said, forget it. There's no reason for me to pursue it anymore. But I'm going to sign that off to, I'll go to Mike and he'll tell you about himself.
All right, I'm Mike McDonald. I am one of the two training coordinators for the Attorney General's office. I've been there currently for about 7 years, so I'm the longest of the team, but the shortest term to go because I'm older than everybody. But I come from law enforcement. I've been in law enforcement 27 years. I still work part-time in law enforcement, but I do a lot of training, which we'll get into it. But with the 27 years in law enforcement, I was on a sheriff's department to start out with. I was chief deputy there. Then I was chief of police. I actually got out of full-time law enforcement because of a work-related injury. And then spent 7 years as a supervisor with the Civil Commitment Unit for Sex Offenders in Cherokee. Most of that time spent just interviewing Iowa's worst of the worst sex offenders and learning how they think and how they got their victims. Because I do think that's one important thing that law enforcement doesn't get is the actual offender's perspective of things. So I will now turn it over to Sarah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Hewlin. I feel like I know most of the room today. So I've been with the AG's office for almost 3 years. My title is really long. It's a sexual assault forensic response coordinator. That's a real mouthful. Previous to that, I worked as was actually in the county attorney's office my last year of working for the county on the felony docket. But previous to that, my experience was a victim advocate. We did both sexual assault and violent crime. And that's kind of where I figured out that sexual assault is my passion. So most of what I do in my job currently is working with the sexual assault nurse examiners across the state and all the hospitals, kind of helping to make sure things run smoothly when victims go to the hospital to receive medical services.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jacqueline White, and I think I might be the shortest one here. Sorry. So I've been with the AG's office. December will be my 1 year mark, so I might be the shortest termer here. Well, Tracy, we're here together. But my main training, I'm the other training coordinator for the unit, but I train mostly in domestic violence and human trafficking, and hopefully prevention, right? That's kind of what we all want. Did anybody come to the conference that was on Monday and Tuesday? That was our baby, right? So glad you came. Next time I'll get all of you guys. But kind of my background, I've been in law enforcement for about 12 years, kind of started off with military police, went into corrections. And then I decided I don't want to be a cop anymore. Life got a little bit more difficult, especially when it came to corrections. I was at a men's minimum security facility in North Carolina. So if you hear the twang, that's where it's coming from. That's where I'm originally from. But with corrections, and I don't know if any of you guys have to work with, correction units, it is pretty difficult. So I decided I'm going to go back to school. I took a Natalie moment, right? Like, let's go back to school. Great idea. Got my bachelor's, and I didn't get it in criminal justice. I actually got it in social work. I wanted to change the perspective of law enforcement. That was my idea. And so with all of that, I decided to go back into law enforcement, and I finished out my term actually in Huxley, so not too far from here. And I did 5 years with them before coming to the AG's office. That's my background.
All right, good morning. My name is John Gish. I am the section chief for victim assistance. I am also a reservist in the Army Reserve. I've been in that for about 15 years, and nothing can be more stressful than some of the work I do there, where I do have the pleasure of jumping out of planes every now and then. I came from Washington County, where I was the county attorney for the last 6 years up until January 2023. And I think what you're hearing from this group and really what's emblematic of the entire Attorney General's office is that we are all coming from the front line, whether it's Polk County or other parts of Iowa or the border. We have all served in your positions where you are working directly with crime victims and perpetrators. And so that's where I think a big strength comes from with the Iowa Department of Justice is the ability to understand and then focus our efforts to address your needs. One of the things I want to talk about is that earlier this year, we completed an audit of victim services. We are able to identify a number of things that we ultimately wanted to improve upon, things that we wanted to make sure we were doing the most under Iowa law for crime victims. You'll be able to hear some of those changes in today's presentation, but my main message that I want to get out is that none of these changes will mean anything without partnerships. And one of the ways we can strengthen partnerships, including in Polk County, is through training. And you'll hear about that as well. The Iowa Attorney General's Office offers a range of free training programs. These programs focus on the unique challenges you all face in working with victims of crime. From trauma-informed communication strategies to understanding the rights and needs of Iowa victims, we want to equip you with the tools and knowledge that make your jobs easier and more impactful. Ultimately, our office wants to be a resource for you. That's why we're here today, and thank you to Brett and the team for inviting us. But most of all, thank you for the work you do. Every day, you provide comfort, safety, and stability to people during their darkest hours. Your work is critical to the well-being of our communities, and I hope you know just how valued you are. So with that, I'll hand it off to Tracy and the team, and please let us know if there's anything after this training that you wish you want to learn more about, or something from this training today that you want to take to your teams. So thank you, Tracy.
Thank you. Okay, so we already introduced ourselves, but I'm very blessed. I have a fantastic training and outreach team, from my training coordinators to my resource coordinator, who also works on the identity theft program and passport program that you'll hear more about, and the sexual assault forensic response coordinator, who has put in tireless hours for the new rules that you'll hear about, as well as increasing the number, the funding for SANEs, the sexual assault nurse examiners or qualified providers, from $200 to $400. And that is a huge feat because they hadn't had a raise in over 20 years. So these members, you'll get their contact information at the end, but they are responsive. They will respond to you. Night or day, they want to help you. We're partners. We're standing beside you. So just remember that. I'm going to speak a little bit about our programs. So victim assistance section is under the Iowa Department of Justice Attorney General's Office. And there's 3 different prongs to it. We have victim support services, which most of you know better as grants. Then we have our training and outreach program. And that is to provide that notice and that education and the services and tell more people about it. And then we have the payment program, that crime victim compensation and sexual assault examination payment, because we really want to help victims become survivors. And one way to do that is providing them the resources. And those resources are also for first responders who get affected by a violent crime. So it's important to realize there are no caps. If you need a closing on that gap, then we're here to help you. So as I said before, the victim support services are grants. And as you can see, we reward funding to crime victims to help them heal. We reward grants for crime justice programs. We support victim witness coordinators, law enforcement agencies, victim service grants to nonprofits. So we really try to have a comprehensive grant support program to provide resources to close that gap where they wouldn't be able to provide the resources without this funding. If you look at the victim support service, we have funding in several different areas. We have, of course, the legislation appropriation from Iowa. We have the Family Violence Prevention and Services Act. We have STOP, the service training officers. You can read all of them. But one of them that you're going to hear more about is the VOCA. And this is huge because the Victims of Crime Act, we had a major cut this past year, fiscal year, $5.5 million we were short. And as Polk County EMA and all of you realize, grants are going down. It's not the same days when it was when everything was great and we had a lot of funding. So the funding for the Victims of Crime Act comes from court fees and fines. And because of legislative and federal judicial changes, that has been reduced. And so Governor Reynolds stepped in and gave us the $5.5 million so that all the programs that we support, the nonprofits, the law enforcement, the victim witness coordinators and so forth weren't cut. Because if that 5.5 went into effect, a lot of people would be hurting today. So we're very, very appreciative of the governor's office providing and closing that gap. As you can see, we currently fund several different programs. We have 20 of the Victims of Crime Act projects, 9 law enforcement projects that are funded by victim services grants, 5 prosecutors, 23 victim witness coordinators, and 8 other victim assistance grants. So we really try to make sure that we meet the needs, and so we can be able to serve victims in multiple different ways. The Victim Service Call Center. Think about this as 211 for a victim. This is where a victim can call and get help and resources. They can get information about different programs. So this is a really good number to have. If you are an Iowa number, Iowa Help, just text the 20121 or the 1-800 number. So this is a good number to give out to people that need those resources. Lastly, I'm going to talk about the Iowa Safe to Home. We just executed the renewal of this contract. This is a very, very good important program, especially with the voting and elections coming up, because victims, when you have to apply for things, what do you need? You need an address. Are you going to want your abuser to have your address? No, you're not. And so this, we work with the Secretary of State, and then they give you a secure address that's confidential, and then it's forwarded your address so that you can put in this substitute address on application for apartment, for your voting registration, to receive packages. And nobody's going to know. Your abuser's not going to know your address because they'll be forward confidentiality. So this is very, very important. This is a good program that we support, and has helped a lot of people, and that will help during election season to allow people who have been abused to be able to vote. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike. He's going to talk about our training and outreach program.
Okay, so our training and outreach, the big thing that we do is we want to provide best practices for different things for around the state. We do a lot of training through our office, this team here, but it's not just our office that's doing it. Our PATC, which is our Prosecuting Attorneys Council, our statewide prosecutors also do trainings along with our appeals division. So we actually earlier this year developed a training catalog, and you can access that through our website. If you go to the crime victims part of the AG's office, there's a link there that you can click on. You can pull that up and it lists all the different trainings that not just our office, but our entire Attorney General's office does around the state. And the important thing is those trainings we actually go out and do anywhere in the state. So we don't expect people to always drive to Des Moines to get that training. I'm in Atumwa tomorrow. I'm in Owine next week. We've been in Fayette. We've been to Okoboji. We go anywhere in the state that we're invited to go. And probably the most important part is it's budget friendly because everything we do is free of charge. Other than our bigger conferences that we've had to do registrations for, but our day-to-day operations, anything that we have in there is free for anybody. But it works with victims of, our big part is the victims of violent crimes. It could be anything from sexual assault to domestic abuse. Jackie mentioned trafficking before. Any of that stuff we can do. Different topics. I train at the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy to all the new basic academy classes that come through on topics like rape culture, report writing, alcohol and drug facilitated sexual assaults. So a lot of different things that we do provide that we're willing to do anywhere, pretty much anytime around the state. We try to stay out of Northwest Iowa in January and February for good reasons. I grew up in Northwest Iowa and I was there until I came here. So I just soon not go there during the winter, but we'll do it if we need to. We're in February. In February, we're in Okoboji. Learned why you don't do that in February because you couldn't see across the street. So luckily the snow didn't start until after everybody was in the room, and it was done by the time we were done for the day. So it worked out just fine. But we have administration of statewide programs that we do through the training and outreach. We got tons of materials that Natalie will talk about here in a little bit, and then criminal justice training. We really want to get it out to law enforcement. Try to change that culture, get them more trauma informed, how to work with victims. A few years ago, I had found out the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy was still teaching new officers to interview victims the same they do suspects. So when we did that, I put together a work group and we sat down and we spent an entire day developing a class on trauma informed victim interviewing and another class just strictly on trauma, because we wanted all those new officers before they hit the street to understand what trauma was and what it did to the victims. So then it became apparent that we needed to get out into the public, or not the public, but out around the state, because we needed to get to those officers that were already working the street. Because coming from law enforcement, I know how it is. Everybody goes to the academy, they come out, and the FTOs are like, that's great that you learn that there, but that's not how we do it here. This is what we do. So we really want to make sure we get out and try to turn that culture a little bit. And I do think there is a turn that's happening and things are getting better. So we'll just continue to do that. I do anywhere from 50 to 60 trainings a year with law enforcement. So I'm on the road quite a bit. Some of those were Zoom. We learned that worked okay during COVID that we had to do. And this again, on demand, we're working on, we really want to get some type of, we call it professional platform, to where we can house online trainings for people to be able to log in and do and have those approved where they can get continuing ed credit. So we're working on that. That's a working project that are in progress. It's a dream, but we can do it over Zoom and we can do it in person. So any of those we can do, we're happy to come out and do for anybody. All we need is a room that supports PowerPoint, and we'll bring everybody else. You reach out to either Jackie or myself, we're the two training coordinators. You tell us what trainings that you want out of that catalog, and then we'll take the time to put together everything, get the presenters in order, and get them out to you. One thing I am going to be working on is I want to put together a work group so that we can sit down and figure out what are we missing from there? What are some topics that people feel are important that we need to get into the training piece? And if it's not something that's necessarily in our wheelhouse, then we'll find a partner that does that. So that if somebody calls, just an example, Fayette County attorney called me, we do trainings for him every year. He called and wanted a training on how officers should work with motor vehicle rollovers, including trailers with livestock on them, because they had an issue in Fayette County this summer. So I worked with them. I was able to track down people through Iowa State University that actually do that type of training. So it's nothing we did, but we'll try to help coordinate that for you to get you to the right people, even if it's not something that we do. Different topics, the Victim Assistance 101, that is a lot kind of comparable to what we're doing here, except usually it's Natalie or Sarah that end up doing that part. So they go over the different programs, the compensation, obviously the sexual assault, and domestic violence, the trauma-informed investigations and prosecutions. Our area prosecutors will also come out and talk about trial preparation and testimony to different groups. So if you ever feel like you're going to be stuck on the stand, we're happy to get you some training on that as well. And anything we can come up with, any topic somebody can, if they call and it's not in the training catalog, we'll do our best to put it together. To request a training, here's the link. I'm guessing we can share the PowerPoint or at least the link at some point, and you can go to the on-demand training. There is a victim training.
There's the training that's like it's on our website that gives kind of 6 different courses that you sign up online. So I'll give that link to Brett as well. So when he sends out the PowerPoint, he can send out that link as well.
The last thing I will mention, I had an officer ask me, actually when we were up in Okoboji, you want to know how many people does it take for us to get you to come up here and do a training? Is there a minimum number that has to be in the room? And I told him the minimum number is 1. And he said, you would drive 3 hours to train one person. And I said, I would, because that one person may make a difference in somebody's life. So we're willing to do whatever we can to help any of you along the way. All you got to do is reach out and ask. And now I will flip pages because I hadn't done that yet and turn it over to the next. The conference. Yep. Thank you, Chief Jackie. The conference.
Kind of. All right, so I talked about the conferences. Now what I didn't say is Mike and Sarah also had a sexual assault conference, and you'll see the gray ceiling photo to the left. That was their conference. The purple, of course, it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So I had to definitely make that purple this past week. But we host different conferences throughout. We've done 2-day regional trainings. It can be a full day, whatever it is you need. Mike's 1,000% correct. We'll come out no matter what it is. If it's one person, if it's 1,000. But this was not only the first domestic violence conference that we held, but it also was important. And we kept hearing about more education, especially when it came to domestic violence, not only the prevention of, but how are we going to help our victims? And so along with the AG staff, and governor was there as well to support, they want to make sure that you have that education available. So in April, they had the second sexual assault conference, and that was in Cedar Falls. That actually was a 4-day conference where they had a enormous amount of different types of information that went out. They had approximately 125 attendees. And I don't know if you guys have been to very many conferences around the state, but 125 was a very, very good marker for a second year. They had national presenters as well. I don't know, who was your farthest?
Probably Carl Hirschman from Florida.
So they will come out from everywhere. Within the domestic violence conference, I know we had presenters from New York, from North Carolina, and from Florida. So anything that you need, we will find whoever it is and bring them in for you guys. So working on holding the regional conferences, those are going to kind of start around the 2025. Hopefully we can get some in the new year early on. But those are kind of the 2-day trainings that I talked about. Even if it's a 1-day, we'll make it happen. And then hopefully it'll consist of at least 6 different regional trainings. So what we wanted to try and do is kind of hit the 4 corners and centralized areas as well of the state, so that everyone has access to any sort of training that you guys need. Give it up here.
So kind of piggyback on what Miss Jackie was saying, as far as making sure folks have the applicable resources and supports that needed. This is kind of a quick glimpse of all of the information that is available out of our office that we can send to you guys. It's free of charge. There's no, you'll hit the request. There's a couple different ways that you can get the information, and I'll go over that on the next page. But this is all of our information. A lot of it comes in English and Spanish. We have a lot of information that also comes in Bosnian, Somali, Thai, Chinese, Arabic. I feel like I'm missing another one right now while I'm on the spot, so forgive me in advance. Typically the only ones that are totally in English and Spanish are going to be the ones that are more centralized, like the common ones, the victim assistance brochure, the sexual assault brochures, and then kind of like the homicide and burglary. We would love to be able to expand it and get it in all the languages. At this point, that's just something that we can't do. Vine, and I know Jackie will go over Vine a little bit, but Vine is one of those that also comes in 4 different languages. It's not up on our screen, but again, as far as brochures and materials that are available, we want to make sure that you guys have access to the different information so it can be helpful and supportive to those that you're working with. To kind of give you a general idea, there's a couple different ways. So when you go to the website online, we've been updating our website, so it may not be overly user friendly, but when you go to the website, you're going to have 3 basic options to be able to choose to request information. It's going to basically say like informational flyer, brochure, applications. It'll have some information for like sexual assault info, and then I think it's kind of a miscellaneous. Regardless of what you pick, there is a box there that you can always leave notes. It's coming to me, guys. You can put the notes in there, Natalie, I need this. I know it doesn't necessarily say quantities and whatnot. We're trying to get this order sheet online. There was an older version of it that had incorrect information It has been updated. It has all of the applicable material that we do offer and which languages it does come in. Like I said, you can either fill that out, email it to me, fax it to me. You can go to the website and put in the order request. It'll come to me. I got a lot of people who will email me directly and just say that they need things, and I'll get that out. Again, it is free. There is no cost. And I believe the next one is going to.
All right, so there's quite a few additional resources you have access to. You'll see the list online, or excuse me, on the screen above. But I'll kind of start off with Iowa Vine. So it is a free and confidential service. Anybody remember the old program? Anybody use it? Everybody used it, hopefully, a little bit. So a couple of you guys were shaking your head, yes. But it also allows victims of crime and any other citizen, doesn't matter who it is, but you can actually have access to reliable information about the offender's custody status. If you guys did use the older program, you'll remember, and I'm probably skipping ahead a few slides, but you'll remember several text messages would go out about offender status. If they were in transfer, it would say that they were out of custody. However, those changes and those issues have been fixed through this new system that we have. But just to let you know, Iowa Vine is actually required by law that we actually have to maintain this and keep it up to date. I will be probably your main contact. Tracy's also on this, and so is Mike. So if anybody ever decides, which we don't really go on vacation, but if we decide to go on vacation, you always have a backup. But it is that free service. It can be accessed online. It can be accessed. Most everyone has a mobile phone anymore, but you can do it through that way, calling the 800 number, and it does come in multiple languages. The offender does not know that anyone is registering to get their status. So that's what we mean by confidential. So if we have someone that comes in, let's say through victim services and wants to be notified if their offender's getting out, we can register them. We can still use that safe at home address, whatever the concern is, and make sure that it's still completely confidential, and it can even be anonymous. So they can access the offender information also by calling the toll-free number that you'll see here in a little bit, and either again by the app online access. And the languages that Natalie was talking about, English, Spanish, Bosnian, and Somali. So but this is kind of a little bit of a view, again, phone, text, app, email, a telephone, 4 languages. And this is kind of what they will help with. So you can search for someone, look up their registration statuses, find any providers that you can possibly have. So if you need mental health services or whatever the case, you can find those there. And if you need guidance on kind of where to go from here, it'll have all of that within that Vine program. So these are the text messages that I kind of told you about. So you're registered for reoccurring statuses. This confirms your registration. This is what you will normally get once you register for information on that offender. The second message you'll see was kind of those conflicting messages that someone received. They were released from custody. They were actually transferred. So you'll no longer see that kind of mix up. And if you do, you have your team here and we'll make sure that that gets corrected. So there were 141,379 new registrations. And out of that, there were 417,596 actual actual notifications sent. And if I'm not mistaken, yeah, this was through 2023, like July, until June of 2024. So this was just in a 1-year span. How many registrations we received and notifications that were sent out. If you are, obviously you guys provide services as well, or your front line, even if you are a victim of any sort of crime, or you want to know an offender status, you can sign up as well. There doesn't have to be a rhyme or a reason as to why you sign up. You can still get notifications on offenders throughout the system as well.
I'm just going to briefly talk about the Iowa Protective Order Notification System. The title is still in work. One thing that Attorney General Byrd noticed once she came into office was that this was out of compliance since 2019 from the former administration. That's unacceptable. If most of you know, the protective order notification, the first 2 hours after that served is the most dangerous for a victim. So we have not been providing the services to the victim. We are correcting that right now. We're working through the implementation process so we can get these messages out to those who need them most during this very dangerous time period in their life. So it's important that just keep your eyes and ears open. We're working through it. Hopefully the beginning of next year, we are hoping with the implementation process, and we'll have a new easy, friendly name for it as well. But again, this is the notification. You sign up that when you get a protective order, you sign up for this. You're going to need anybody that's a family or neighbor or anybody that might be in danger can sign up. They need the protective order number. They search for it. They get their information, sign up, and then they'll be provided notice once it's served. So this is going to help keep our victims safe.
Okay, the track hit system. This is something that's newer to the state of Iowa, but not new anymore. We started working on this in 2019. I was asked by the Attorney General's office to help develop this system. We worked with Stax DNA out of Canada because they had already had a similar type of system in 6 other states here in the United States. So essentially track hit, what it is, it's a system to track sexual assault kits when they're done. So each of the kits now have a barcode on them. And when a nurse performs an exam, they go into the system, they scan the barcode, or they can type it in to kick it off. They answer a few questions, the date, who collected. There's some other questions they have to answer there. And then they assign it to a law enforcement agency for jurisdiction. And then when the law enforcement agency picks it up, they then scan it into the system and they accept it over. And then when it goes to the lab accepts it. You can kind of get the flow of what's going here. So essentially it tracks that sexual assault kit from start to finish if it gets tested. Now, we all know not all sexual assault kits get tested in the state of Iowa. There's good reason why some of them don't, such as a victim that does it anonymously. Those kits cannot be tested in the state of Iowa. So those can go directly into storage for law enforcement. And sometimes the victim just doesn't want their kit tested. They want to have it done and have it in storage in case they change their mind down the road. So this system is there to track that. But the biggest piece of the system is we actually have it set up so that the survivor can see what's happening with their kit. So now when the nurse does the sexual assault exam, there's approximately a business card size piece of paper in that kit that they give to the survivor that has their barcode number, the website, and a temporary password for them to log in so that they can go in and track what's happening with their kits. They can even set up notifications in there. So once it goes from like the hospital to law enforcement, they can get a text message or email letting them know that changes have been made. It doesn't go into detail of what those changes are in those notifications because just in case they live with the offender or are in a relationship with the offender, we don't want them to be able to see what's going on. It just gives them notice that something's changed so that they can go in and look it up online. But in their portal, it's different than what nurses, medical, in the lab sees. So they can go in, it has resources in there in case they want to reach out to an advocacy group if they chose not to at the time of the exam. So it's been very useful here in the fiscal year 2024 that just ended. 776 kits were entered into the system here in the state of Iowa. Not all sexual assault exams have a sexual assault kit done. So there's been more exams than that, but that's how many kits were performed. 1,771 total survivor login. So that means over 1,700 times a survivor logged into the system to see what's happening with their kit. Now, when it says 1,260 unique users, that means 1,260 survivors logged in. So some of those obviously logged in more than once throughout the year to track what's happening with their kits, but 1,260 victims choosing to log in and see what's happening with their kits is a lot, I thought, when I ran that report. And 183 of them were first times that they logged into the system.
So identity theft. Something that has kind of increasingly grown here in the last couple of years. If you haven't been paying attention to, I'm sure everybody has gotten one of those letters in the mail saying that your doctor's office information was hacked, or they might have gotten access to this and that, and they get that little letter and tell you that they're going to be able to monitor you for like the next year. Well, identity theft, according to Iowa code, occurs when a person uses or attempts to use your personal identifying information to obtain goods, services, or credit. So typically, a hacker scam. Typically, a hacker scam is not identity theft. It could lead into an identity theft issue, but typically it is not an identity theft issue. The identity theft passport was developed as part of the Iowa Code section 715.9A to provide identity theft victims with a way to substantiate that they were a victim of identity theft in the instance of like predators or law enforcement. So when we say passport, no, it's not like a passport you're leaving out of the country with. It's nothing like that. The little ID, and I'll actually show it to you on the next page. But it allows individuals who were the victim of identity theft to apply to the passport, and then if they follow the steps in order to get approved, they will be given this passport, and then they can use that to present it to creditors and law enforcement to substantiate their identity. So for an individual to be able to apply, they need to be a victim of identity theft. So typically they're going to report it to law enforcement. They're going to report their identity theft concerns to law enforcement. Law enforcement is going to complete a police report and a law enforcement verification form. In short, that's going to come back to our office. Victim is going to complete an application, color copy of their ID. And the reason why we ask for the colored copy of their ID is because we're actually going to snip it out in a clip art and apply it to the ID if we're able to get them approved. Everybody's situation is different. Typically, it takes about 30 to 40 days, but it also depends on where they're at in the informational stage. Did they just find out? Have they been able to dispute it? Have they gotten the information back from whoever they were disputing it from? It could change and it could vary. An identity theft passport will not be issued in the case of a mistaken identity. That's not what it's used for. That's not its purpose. So I kind of jumped ahead. So as you can see, the requirements on how to apply. So once we get all of that documentation into the office, ultimately we're going to review it. We're going to review it to see if everything is okay. For example, to give you kind of an idea, an IRS issue. Let's say somebody files their tax information and it comes out in the course of it, their accountant, H&R Block, whoever reaches out to them and says, hey, the social security number has been used on another claim. The IRS has their own documentation, their own forms that they want that individual to complete and fill out. So they're going to have to jump through those steps with the IRS to get those forms filled out, and then ultimately wait for the response from IRS and ideally get that to us, which we will use to determine eligibility. For someone else, it may be a little bit different. A couple years back when I was doing the identity theft program, I had a young lady just randomly got pulled over by law enforcement. I don't know, I think she ran a stop sign or something. When the cop ran her information, there was a warrant out for her arrest. The young lady's like, hey, it's not me. I haven't had any trouble with law enforcement, so on and so on and so forth. Well, in the course of me reviewing this information to determine whether or not she would be eligible, the officer sent me a video of the cam order reporting. In short, it was the twin sister. The twin sister happened to have a tattoo or something on her arm. Video cam caught it. They were able to kind of break down and figure out that it was a sister. That could have been a horrible situation because had she had not been pulled over by, a happenstance, she could have went on months without knowing that her identity had been stolen. Now that we jumped through those hoops and we were able to get approved, now she has to kind of go through that criminal process of trying to prove, hey, that's not me, this is me, and so on and so forth. So for everyone's situation, it could be different. It could be a little more time consuming. The steps might require a little more steps, but ultimately, those are the typical things we're looking for. The police report, verification statement from the law enforcement, or excuse me, the law enforcement verification form, the police report, the picture of the ID, and the application. We'll review it and go over that. I apologize. Oh yeah. So then additionally, once we get that processed, we'll move forward. Just to kind of give you guys an idea, we've had 91 applications come in through the fiscal year of June of 23 to July of 24. And of those, we were able to issue 38. Now, that doesn't mean that the difference was denied. They could be pending. It could have been denied, but it can be a lengthy process for someone.
That was kind of like a broad overview of all the other programs that we do. I would say the ones that are most frequently known about are our comp program and the SAE program. So we'll kind of cruise through those because I think people are most familiar with those. So with the sexual assault examination program, it's also the SAE. I know lots of acronyms. That is the program that pays for the cost of sexual assault exams in the state of Iowa. It is an Iowa code that it is illegal to bill a victim for sexual assault services. Sometimes victims do end up getting those bills, get them in contact with us, and we will get that taken care of. One of the nice things about that program, it's regardless if they make a report to law enforcement or not, it's not a requirement. So anyone can go in and get an exam if they've been sexually assaulted. They should not be billed for it. That should include the medications. Oftentimes that portion gets overlooked. Sometimes they're paying for those out of pocket. Again, we will take care of that on our end of things. So with that the sexual assault examination program, the difference between that and the comp program is that they do not have to apply for it. Natalie's going to go over the comp program in a little bit, and most of the people in here have probably seen those little green applications. That is not required for sexual assault examination to be paid for. It is automatically paid for. It is the first payer, whereas with our comp program, the comp program is the payer of last resort. So they should not be getting a bill for that. Their insurance is never responsible. When they're at the hospital, they shouldn't be technically asked for their insurance information. However, there are obviously exceptions to everything. So if a victim comes in and they're being treated for sexual assault, but they're also extra injuries. Maybe they need a CAT scan or have a broken arm or some sort of other injury that would go through their insurance through that comp program. But anything that the sexual assault nurse examiner does should not be charged to them. It covers adults, it covers children, and it kind of makes them automatically eligible for a comp program too that Natalie's going to talk about. So like I said, they don't pay for it, so we pay the hospital for those services. The fees that are up on the screen right now are what we are currently reimbursing hospitals for. So they currently get a $300 provider or a fee for the hospital just for opening their doors and having the victim come in. The $200 examiner fee is what Tracy was referring to earlier. That's the fee that the state nurses have been getting paid for 20 plus years. AG Bird has now put it into place where we're working on getting that up to $400. That should be in place hopefully before the beginning of the next year. But that's really exciting. With that we're putting into place some standards for their nurses, and we're also having some exceptions to that as well, making them qualified providers. But people who are eligible to give those exams will be given that $400 examiner fee, which is huge for the nurses who have been doing this a long time. That $200, 20 years ago went a lot further. Price of gas, price of childcare, if they're on call, that $200 just doesn't go far. Anywho's so we also reimburse, like I said, the victim does not pay for those medications. Our program reimburses pharmacies 75% of the cost of those medications. And then if they have a follow-up exam with, an infectious disease provider, their primary care physician, whatever, we reimburse at those same rates as about the $300 and the examiner fee as well. Actually, on this last one here real quick, that's the number of examination claims submitted last year. Mike brought up the 776 kits that were collected. We're really working hard to figure out what an accurate number of sexual assaults are in the state of Iowa. There's no really one place that gives us that number, because that number doesn't equate to the kits, which is a lot of different circumstances for that, because not every survivor gets a kit collected. Not every survivor reports to police. So there's so many different variables for us to get an accurate number on how many sexual assaults are actually occurring in Iowa. But just to know there's a minimum of almost 2,800 last year. Okay, so with the new standards that are going to be going into place for the state nurses and qualified providers, the point of that is so that victims can get specialized care from someone who knows what they're doing. Across Iowa, there are not sane nurses in every facility. We are very blessed here in Polk County. We have a really great team of nurses. It does not look like that statewide. There are counties across Iowa who don't have any sexual assault providers. So a victim can walk in the door and either they're going to have someone who is untrained collecting that kit. And most of the people in here have an idea about trauma. They also know that maybe getting the best care at the time should be what's happening, but it's not. So our goal with that is that when a victim walks into a facility, they are getting the best care possible. Because of that, with these standards that are going to go into place, have requirements for the nurses and the people providing the care to meet certain standards to provide those exams. If they provided an exam and they are not on our qualified list of providers, they will not be reimbursed that $400 provider. So we are holding people up to a higher standard of giving good care. We've also found that we have a lot of people who've undergone the same training across the state, but there are lack of, some of the smaller counties maybe only have one patient per year. So when a patient does come in, they are comfortable doing an exam. So then they're sending them to a different facility. And again, that's not good for victims. We want them to come to a facility, get the care they need at that time, not sit around for 8 hours, not be transferred to another hospital 2 or 3 hours away. So the goal is for them to get the care that they need when they walk into the hospital. So putting those standards into place, increasing that pay is the hope that it kind of improves all that. All right, Natalie, you're up.
So I know we're getting short on time, guys, so I'm gonna do this as quickly and efficiently as I can. Compensation program. The compensation program will pay certain out-of-pocket expenses that victims of violent crimes incur due to the crime. So in order to apply, or who should apply, I should say, it should be victims of violent crimes committed in the state of Iowa, Iowa residents injured by a violent crime in a state or nation without a federally approved crime victim compensation program, family or household members of the primary victim. There are no income requirements, no other resource requirements. It doesn't matter if there's an adverse background. Common question is, well, what's a violent crime? So according to Iowa Code, forcible felony and includes any other felony or aggravated misdemeanor which involve the actual or threatened infliction of physical or emotional injury on one or more persons. So examples of that are going to be what you see on the board: your homicide, your stalking, your assault, your child abuse, domestic violence, sexual assaults, things like that. That would be examples of violent crimes. Property crimes, like robbery, residential burglary, residential arson, and other property crimes may be committable crimes, where there's a threat of personal injury or harm against a person. And we do look at a residence as something that includes like a detached garage or shed or similar structure, because we do realize that sometimes people are homeless and they may be living in their car or consider their car shelter. Truth about property crimes, to kind of just give you an idea, because there is that misconception of what we will cover. Most property losses are not going to be committable under Iowa Code. However, a victim may be eligible if, for example, clothing might have been held as evidence due to the crime and law enforcement happened, or their residential security items damaged, or there may be deemed inadequate due to the crime. Cell phones that may be held as evidence is something that we could consider, especially if it's held by law enforcement or damaged or destroyed. Eligibility requirements, in short, the individual cannot be consenting or provoking or enticing the crime. They cannot be in the course of trying to commit a criminal act. They do need to cooperate with law enforcement. There's a 2-year filing limit and 72-hour reporting limit. Now, we do realize there may be circumstances where that individual may not be able to apply, especially if it's like a domestic violence or a sexual assault situation. That does not mean they cannot. Sometimes the people just don't know that the program existed, believe it or not. And so they couldn't apply because they weren't aware of it. So in instances like that, we definitely want to encourage you, if you're working with someone, have them apply. It's a quick conversation. We're going to ask a couple questions as to why they didn't, and we're going to make note of it. We do have the ability to make an exception to that rule, but we need to know what's going on before that could be applied. Chapter 915 generally requires a filing of a criminal report. We utilize the criminal report to determine eligibility. Again, we also realize that it may not always be available if it's a domestic or sexual situation. It may not have been reported to law enforcement. And that's why we rely on you wonderful providers that are working directly with individuals, because you can provide a provider statement in regards to what may have happened if that individual reported to you. We can use that in lieu of the police report in order to determine eligibility. Another thing we can waive reporting is due to the victim's age, physical condition, if there was a psychological state, again, cultural or linguistic barriers for safety reasons. Call us, just give us a call. When in doubt, give us a call. There's basically three types of applications, and in short, the primary application is the individual that was directly impacted by the crime. The individual that was hurt, witnessed, saw it. There could be more than one primary situation, but we need the primary victim. We need the primary application to kind of start the process. Because, for example, real quick, let's say Miss Tracy was the victim of the violent crime. She provides an application for herself, but let's say I'm her daughter, and because I live in the home, I'm around, I can apply too. If I get my application in before she gets her application in, there might be a little bit of confusion or delay in the application process because we've got to make the two figure out where they come together. So it's very important that we get the primary application in, or at least it's flagged on who's the primary, if there's a secondary or like a survivor app included. And again, that's a conversation. Give us a call. It's nothing big. We're here to work through it, answer any questions that you may have. To kind of give you an example of some things that we would be able to cover if approved, counseling and medical expenses. As someone mentioned earlier, we are the payer of last resort. So if a person has a primary or secondary insurance, that's going to kick in first. Then we will kick in up to $25,000. You can also consider sometimes the provider may not take a certain insurance. So we can look at it for those reasons. Household security items, emergency relocation. Now the emergency relocation is a one-time allocation of up to $1,000. One-time allocation. I know that tends to get a little bit confusing with folks, but it's still going to go through the normal application process. The typical application takes about 30 to 40 days to approve. So obviously, if you're working with somebody that needs an emergency relocation, it may not necessarily be something that we can do right away. But again, that's where those providers that we're working with in the community would also be able to assist and help to help us get through that barrier. Lost wages, transportation. Kind of quick through real quick, kind of the benefits of a primary, benefits of a secondary, benefits of the survivor, just generally. And then to kind of give you an idea for compensation by numbers, we received over 3,200 applications. We approved over 2,700, denied about 350. So you can see, we want to help people. We want to get people approved. We want to get people to support our services. We paid out about about 3 million. A little over 3 million is paid out for total compensation. Our money comes from, and I know Tracy covered that a little bit earlier, so I won't go too much. Criminal penalty surcharges, OWIs, we get federal supplements, inmate wages. To give you a general idea, combined between the SAE program and the comp, we paid out over about 5 million. It was paid out to victims and survivors. Application is pretty easy. It can be done online. You can do it online. You can call over the phone. You can fax it in, mail it in. I know one of the gals referenced the green application. The green applications are the English ones. The purple ones, if you're seeing them in the community, are the Spanish. But again, there's no limit. Give us a call. I always recommend calling us. It always helps, especially if the person has questions or might need resources. You can reach us by calling our main office, the 1-800 number, online. Here's our basic information. It has been updated. I know Ms. Tracy was telling folks that we've moved. For those of you that do not know or did not hear that, we are no longer in the Lucas building. We are now in the Hoover building. And so this has our updated information. The telephone numbers and fax did not change. Our website info, and then our individual information on how to contact us. That's it, guys. Any questions? Thoughts, comments? Now I kind of ran through that last part.
Sure. A lot of information in a very short time.
But as I said before, all of our staff members are very responsive. So if you have questions that we did not leave you time for today, please reach out. Please send an email, a phone call. If we don't know the answer, we will find the person with the right answer. So we're here to stand by you and to help you, and we all have the same goal, to help victims, to help first responders, and to share the knowledge and to really close those gaps. And the last thing I want to say is, if there's something that you think that we are not providing in resources or knowledge, you got to let us know so we can close that gap and work with you to provide the resources and training that are needed in our community and throughout the state of Iowa. So, thank you.